to the webinar on how to automate your financial accounting on NetSuite conducted by Aarialife Technologies. We are excited to host you today for what we hope will be an informative session for you. We thank you all for taking the time to attend this morning. Allow me to briefly introduce ourselves at Aarialife Technologies. We at Aarialife Technologies have been part of the NetSuite ecosystem for over a decade and are vigorous proponents of the platform. We are globally present, serving customers in North America and from our offices in Canada. Our EMEA customers are served from our office in UAE, and APAC is served from India. Our primary focus is cloud technologies, AI, and IoT. Our cloud offering is represented by NetSuite and Zoho. For AI, we have launched our AI-powered chatbot recently, which is listed on suiteapp.com. And for IoT, we have recently launched our farm automation application. Representing Aarialife today are myself and the star of today's informative session, Mr. Amit Prabhu, a very experienced NetSuite solution consultant and also heads Aarialife's NetSuite practice. With that said, Amit, pass over the baton to you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Chirag. Good morning and good evening, everyone. People joining from different places in here. Chirag, if I'm not audible, do let me know so I can adjust accordingly.
You are coming through just fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So, what we are going to do today is we would look at how basically you could, automate your financial accounting, specifically using Oracle's NetSuite platform, which is known for its capabilities as a cloud ERP. The areas where we focus is basically onto how expense allocation can be done within NetSuite, how the budget management happens, how we can have multiple budgets, how amortization schedules can be defined, and also we would look a bit at how billing schedules work in NetSuite, and then how statistical accounts actually work in NetSuite. Okay. I would not waste much of your time onto the presentation and would directly want to jump onto the product. Okay, perfect. So, this is where NetSuite looks like. We have the NetSuite Screens. Some of you might be familiar with it who have been using it. Some new to the system. NetSuite is a complete role-based system, and it has its own dashboards, which can be very user-friendly to you while you operate the system as such. Now, from an agenda perspective, coming back, we would talk about how expense allocations can be done in NetSuite. And predominantly why expense allocations are used is to apportion cost between multiple departments, locations, or subsidiaries sometimes. These are called as dimensions in NetSuite. So if I have to talk about expense allocation, the most important thing we talk is how we create allocation schedules. Okay, these are predefined templates what you can create. For example, I have a template here called as rent expense, and you might actually do expenses on your building rent. Okay, this is a schedule which is created here. And then you define which account to pick up the expenses from. So if you see here, it's a general rent expense account. Okay, you just post a journal voucher entries or create a bill for any expense you want. And the way things would happen is once this schedule is run, the expense would be divided into the following departments. You can definitely define locations, classes with the defined weightages to it. Okay. Now this is a fixed allocation mode. You also have a dynamic allocation wherein details can be dynamically picked up from the statistical accounts to apportion all the expenses. Okay. Quickly running back here, I would want to open a bill. Okay, so let me actually go and open purchase bill. I've created a couple of bills here just so that we understand how things work. Okay, so here are three bills which we have: $3,000, $2,000, and $2,000. If I open a bill, you will see that this bill is nothing but an expense entry in NetSuite. Okay, and what it does in totality is it hits your account which is mentioned on the allocation schedule. So we have an account here which is the source account, the rent expense account, and this particular bill is hitting the rent expense account. Now, while we actually do the allocation, run the allocation schedule, I put a small reminder on my portlet so that I know when to run the schedule. So I have this all the due allocations schedules coming on right onto my dashboard. If I click here, it'll actually tell me which all expense allocation schedules are due for this month. I can simply go and click on enter, and this should create a journal voucher entry for me, allocating all the expenses I have done for that month into the respective departments. So if you really see, I have this journal entry which is created. My account here, which I have been using, the rent expense account, okay, gets credited and all the accounts get debited here. Okay, so I'm moving basically is 5,000 in proportions defined in a template into all the necessary department accounts. Okay, this really helps while you try to automate stuff, while you want to have your expenses allocated to different locations, cost, and have reporting onto it. Okay. Now the best part here is while this journal entry gets created, there is allocation which is tagged to it, so you know from where this journal entry is coming. Okay, and you know the details of the allocation. Okay. Now, if I have to go back to the allocation schedule and look at the history, I also get to know for which month, which is the journal voucher entry which gets created. And if I have to click on this, it will actually show me the actual journal entry which has been created from it. Most importantly, this journal entry is marked as created from allocation. So you know while you actually run through your journal entries, which ones are created from the schedules and which ones are something which you have been posting. Okay. Now, this is more to do with how the allocation works in NetSuite, and this is very important because it automates, your entire expense allocation for all your dimensions. Okay. The second thing what we wanted to discuss today is on the budget side of it. So, NetSuite by default comes with a budget, but what happens is while you create a budget, okay, you can only create a single budget, and there is a module which comes in which allows you to create multiple budgets as well. Okay, so this is where you go and do your budgeting. Let me open one budget for you which is created. So this is an example of a budget which is created, and you see here you have all the accounts in here. You have defined which subsidiary this budget belongs to, what is the budget category type, and then you put in the budgeted values. So for each account I can define my budget per month, and this is at the account level. Okay, and I can have multiple revisions of this. So I can say one current budget, one budget for 2018 Jan, one budget for 2018 November, one for December. I can define all of this. Okay, and while I do this on my reports, as I start making my expense and income entries, my purchase cycles, my sales cycle run, what I get is a report which talks about budget versus actuals. This will give you a very tight control over over your budget, because you now know, okay, for 2018 budget for this year, I'm looking at consolidated values. I can even look at values per subsidiary if I want to do that. I had budgeted X amount for a particular account, and this is the amount I have actually spent on that account. This gives also me how much I'm overshooting, what's the deviation from my budgets. Now this is for 2018 budget category, but I can define multiple budgets, as I said. If I actually change the budget category to current, that's what I have defined as a name while I set the budget up. All my budgeted amount reflects as per this budget. So I always have multiple baselines of budgets to compare with my actuals, what I have done, and then we at the end of the year we can conclude what was the deviation type from what we had budgeted for. Okay. Now, this is a very important report which comes for your financial functions. We also can have controls while you do transactions to help you with warning messages on when you're exceeding your budgets. We can define workflows around it as well. Okay. So in totality, budget management actually helps you control all your expenses. You know where you're overspending, you know where you're underspending, and where you can focus actually. The third aspect, what we talk about in this particular webinar, is more to do with amortization schedules. Now, amortization basically works on your expenses. So any expenses which you have incurred now and which you would want to amortize over a period of time can be defined. And very similar to the way we had defined expense allocation, we can also define amortization schedules. So if I have to go to define an amortization schedule, okay, I'll just open one. And I have the schedule called as prepaid expenses. I'll just view that. So I'll just show you how this is configured in the system. Okay, so we define here what type of schedule it is, whether it's a standard schedule or do I want to have a variable schedule of amortization. If I define variable, I can define manual recurrences of it as well. Okay, if I have standard, then I can define what method I want to use, whether I want to use a straight line, I want to prorate it, I want to use exact days of the month, or I can have custom function as well, wherein again I can define custom recurrences here. Okay, so generally companies use straight line or exact day of the month. I would, in this example, use straight line method by even periods. Okay, we also can define the transaction source. Okay, do I want to take the source of my amortization as the transaction date or as the receipt date of the amount? Okay, and then you define what's the deferral account, contra account, all of the settings defined here. How many months you would want to amortize. It's a template. If you want to define it here, you define it, or you can define it as a start date and end date onto your expenses. Okay. You can also define the period offset. So for example, if I'm doing a transaction today and the source is transaction date, I can define maybe a offset of 1, so the amortization would not start from today, it would start 1 month from now. Okay, so we have a period offset and we have a start offset. We also can define a residual as well as the initial amount to be considered while things are amortized. Okay, let me quickly show you an example here. I have a bill which I have created. I'll just show this bill to you. Okay, so while this bill was created, we have attached amortization schedule here. So I'll just edit this bill, and you see here we have actually taken one expense account. I can take expense or I can take item here for amortization, and then I select which is the amortization template I intend to use. I define a start date and end date for this amortization. Okay, and I will save this. What this will do is it will create a complete amortization schedule for you. Okay, let me show that, and let's see how that looks. Click on view, and you see here my prepaid expenses, or what I had done on equipment rental, have been amortized over a period of time. Okay, in equal installments, because I had taken straight line equal installments. There are no journal voucher entries against any of the schedules till now. Okay. Now you would want to start amortizing it as you as you run your business every end of the month. So you can actually go here, you can say financials, and you can create amortization journal entries. Now, while you create all these journal entries, you can select the posting period. You can select, these are all filters which are available to you. You have all the bill sources which you need, and then, you will have all the amortizations you can do uh, for that particular criteria you define. After defining all of this, I can just say go and create journal voucher entries, and the system will run this cycle and create journal voucher entries for you. Okay, it's a batch process what the system will do, because there are a lot of bills here, so all these bills would be taken into consideration while it is done. Okay, now while this happens, the system will also pass necessary journal voucher entries reflecting the amortizations against each transaction you have selected. Okay, so that's more to do with the amortization. uh, we have a function in NetSuite which is also called as billing schedule, and is also part of our discussion today. Billing schedule basically is more from a sales perspective, and if you want to bill a customer in a scheduled fashion, for example, equated monthly installments, you are selling something and you want to receive money from the customer at specified interval at specified amounts, or maybe you are renting out the equipment and you want to receive money against that in rental what you have done in specified intervals. That is where the billing schedule would come into picture. Okay, just to give you a small example here, let me go to a sales order. And on the sales order, I'll just pick up one sales order here. Okay, so while you create the sales order, you can define what item you are creating the billing schedule for. Okay, and select the billing schedule here. Now, very similarly, the way we did expense allocation schedules, the way we did amortization schedules, you can define a template. Okay, this is how a template of a billing schedule looks like. So this is monthly template. You can define the initial amount you want to bill to the customer, what are the payment terms for the initial amount, what is the recurrence frequency. So you might have quarterly billing, monthly billing, annual billing. You can define all of that, or you can do a frequency based on start and end date, and you can define how you want to repeat it. So if it's monthly, repeat after how many months. If it is quarterly, you can just give a recurrence count here as well. So you can have annually as well. So all of that can be defined in a schedule. Okay, and you also define how many counts you want. So for example, I want to recur this particular billing for 12 months right now in this particular schedule. We have an option here for in areas. That means that instead of starting it right now at the time of creating a sales order, you actually start billing at the end of the period. Okay, so while the period is getting over, the system would start creating billing schedules for you. And you also have the payment terms you can define for the recurrence of the billing schedule. Now, coming back onto the sales order, we have the billing schedule defined here. And let's see what happens when we actually save the transaction. The system will now create a future entries for you. It will give you a projection of how the billing would happen. Since I have taken 12,000, it will do n straight line method with zero tax. It would divide this 12,000 in a straight line of 1,000 for 12 months. So if I go to billing here and look at the schedule, how it looks like, you would see that for each month, that's starting from this month onwards, okay, till 12 months, it's equally divided the amount. Okay, and we have a next bill and bill remaining option. So next bill will actually only pick up $1,000 because my next bill is of $1,000. This is something if I want to do one by one onto sales orders. Okay. If I want to do it in bulk, I have that option too. So this is $1,000 on next bill because my billing information says so. Okay. If I have to do it in bulk, I have an option for that as well. We have an option wherein we can go and create, you know, billing schedule batches. Okay. So the second option what you have is the bill remaining. This will actually close off all the remaining billing schedules into the last invoice you create. Okay, so if I do bill remaining, it will actually create 12,000 because that's the amount which is pending right now to be billed. Okay, there you go. The final thing what we wanted to talk about was more to do with the chart of accounts and more to do with statistical chart of accounts in specific. This is specific option available wherein you need to enable it separately. It is there in the enable feature option. Okay, and once these features are enabled, what happens is the system will allow you to capture non-monetary data onto your chart of accounts. So this option is actually available in the accounting section of it, wherein you can have statistical accounts enabled. And then while you create your chart of accounts, I'll just say new chart of account, you have an option wherein you can select a type called as statistical as well. Okay, so I have a couple of accounts created here. I'll filter it by statistical. So a normal statistical account would be something like this: number of shares, head counts, square feet area. The non-monetary data for you to use onto your financial statements. Okay, and let's see how that's been used. So if I have to open up maybe a income statement, I've just custom done an income statement here. You see here, I have added something called as employee count. Actually, I have used a statistical account here because this is non-monetary data, and I have actually derived what is cost per employee and what is revenue per employee as well. Okay, so the simplest thing what I did was I just went and I created a statistical journal voucher entry. I'll just go back there. Yeah, so I just made a statistical journal voucher entry, and these entries were made on the head count. Okay, so in this option, while you make a statistical journal voucher entry, it allows you to select a posting date, it allows you to select your statistical account, and it allows you to put in the amount, what value the statistical account should have in it. Please note, I have mentioned minus 30 here. Statistical accounts are contra negative, so minus 30 actually represents a positive value while you report onto them. Okay, so if I go back onto my report, let's open this report. Okay, I'm getting a bit technical here, but in this, what we can do is we can have employee count, and then we can have cost per employee. Use the statistical account. Now this is the statistical account I'm holding. Okay, to divide by any monetary account you have. So you have a chart of account which holds the monetary data, and then I have a statistical account holding non-monetary data to act as a formula onto a monetary data account. Okay, and this actually results in giving me giving me a formula based details onto my financial reports as well. So statistical accounts can really be very helpful while using them onto your reports. Having said that, at a very high level, this is what we wanted to cover today, but I also quickly wanted to show you a few reports which are possible using something like billing schedules. So this is one report which we created for billing schedules, which is more intending towards forecasting of the income I'm supposed to get, okay, over a period of time. So we have this Jan, Feb, March data here, and the system actually allows us and tells us that for which customer, because I have grouped by customer, how much money I'm expected to receive over a period of time. Okay, and then you can actually go back and open this and also understand for which item or for which order number how much money I'm supposed to get in which month. This gives me a clear cash flow indication of how much cash flow I could get over a period of time based on the services I've been selling, which are defined in my billing schedules. Okay. Perfect. Any questions? Chirag, you would want to open the forum for questions if there are any.
So anybody who's can raise a hand, or yeah, there you have Q&A. Somebody is asking a question. Does NetSuite also maintain budget revisions and versions?
Okay. Yes, NetSuite does maintain budget revisions. As I did mention, you can go and define budgets. So let me go back to my budget management. So while you set up budgets, we have something called as budget categories. These are nothing but budget revisions. I can define a name for each revision I make, okay, and put the budget for each of the revision. Having said that, I can also define client-specific budgets. I can define item-specific budgets, classification, dimension, locations. I mean, I can use all the dimensions onto my budget for specifically reporting onto those dimensions. I missed out earlier, there is also an option wherein I can copy budgets, okay? And while I copy these budgets, what happens is I can give an escalation. So I can say, okay, I want to copy a budget from 2018, which is known as, the budget version is known as maybe budget 2018 budget, to 2019, okay? And I can give it a name, 2019 budget or current maybe, okay? And I can actually do escalation onto it. So I can say income, or I want to copy everything, and I want to maybe escalate everything by 20%, okay? And this will actually make a copy, but it will escalate all the values by 20% for my next budget. Yep, any other questions?
Yes, can we set up budgets and use allocation schedules to allocate budgets for the segment?
Can we set up budgets and use...
Can we set up budgets and use allocation schedules to allocate budgets for the segments?
No, so allocation schedules are predominantly used for expenses. It does not work on the budget side of it. It always works on the expense side of it.
I don't get arrears checkbox on billing schedule.
Okay, so I understand you are already a NetSuite user. You want an arrears checkbox on billing schedule. You will not get it on billing schedule. You will get it on billing template. Okay, so while you create a billing schedule, just hold on, I'll just show that to you. This is the checkbox you don't get. This is the default functionality in NetSuite. If in case you are having a challenge with this, do reach out to Chirag. He should be able to help you, because this is the default functionality in NetSuite.
Next question. Is the budget check also available at purchase requisitions?
The check is not available by default, but that's something we have been doing for our customers. So the standard NetSuite functionality does not have any checks on transactions. It's only more of reporting side of it. But normally for all our customers, what we do is we keep check on all the expenses. So while they are transacting and creating any kind of expense, we actually throw up a budget check for them, either in the form of a short report right on that screen or in the form of a control wherein a warning message or a non-transaction message is passed by.
Next question is, can the budgets be uploaded?
Yes, they can be uploaded. Ideally, a CSV upload happens.
Next question, can NetSuite block the transaction that exceeds the budget?
Not standardly, but as I did mention, we have done it for a lot of customers. We can do both warnings as well as blocking the record altogether.
Can we define auto-incrementing budgets like, say, January 1000, February 1100, March 1200, April 1300, and so on?
NetSuite does not allow you to do auto-incrementing budgets, but this is what NetSuite allows you to do. I'll just show that. So we can spread the budget, or we can fill the budget. Okay, so if I'm saying that I have an expense here and my budget is say 10,000 across all the months, I can just do a fill. So all my months are filled with 10,000, or I can actually distribute it. So I say my total year's budget is maybe 50,000. I can distribute it across. So I can equally distribute within months.
Those were some good questions. Any other questions? Okay. I think that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. Thank you all for all those who have attended. We sincerely hope that you found this. Oh, look at that. We have some more questions. So, can we have amortization from past date?
Can we have amortization from past date? Yes, you can. You can. Okay. You can define, unless the period is not closed. So the period should not be closed. You need to have an open period, and you can define amortization backdated as well.
So there is a question from Jnana. Are we using workflows on budgets, or maybe is it, can we use workflows on budgets, or when do we use them? I'm not sure I understood the question. Okay. So I think I'll just try to phrase the question. An example of a workflow on the budget would help is Jnana's question.
No, so there is no workflow which can be defined on budget. Budget is not open for the workflow record as of today. But yes, we can script it. So we normally write scripts to control the budget onto the transactions.
Okay. So Jnana, maybe if you would want to get in touch with us, maybe we can propose a scripted solution for you if you like. Welcome. So I believe, right, the folks who have some more questions, so we'll keep the floor open for some more if you like. Okay, I think that's all for the questions. So once again, thank you all for attending, and we sincerely hope that you found it informative and useful in your journey on NetSuite. With that said, from everybody at Aarialife Technologies, we thank you and wish you a pleasant day and a pleasant evening. Just before we go, though, there is another question. Can we have allocation percentages defined at the transaction time itself?
cannot define an allocation percentage at transaction time directly on the transaction, but yes, you can create an allocation schedule from the transaction itself. It gives you a new option. So you can, on the fly, create an allocation schedule and attach it to the transaction. Hope that helps.
Okay. I think since we are getting some late bloomer questions, I guess we'll just hold on for a bit in case any of the folks attending feel like there might be some more questions that they feel are unanswered, and we're happy to help. Okay, I think unless something else pops up, I don't think we have any more questions. So, wishing everyone a pleasant day and a pleasant evening, depending on which time zone you're in. And thank you. We have another question. Can once allocated expenses and posted be modified?
Yes, they can be modified once they are posted, but it depends on what control and rights you have in NetSuite. If you have the right to modify that record, yes, they can be modified.
Any more questions? We have another question from Jnana. Sorry, going back to the workflows, say I have created a budget and my actual exceeds my budget, and I want to set up an alert for that. Should it be done with a script, or can it be achieved through a workflow?
No, it needs to be done with a script. Perfect. I think.
Okay. I think that should do it. Unless somebody else has any other questions, we'd like your permission to conclude the webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Wish you all the best from everyone at Aarialife Technologies. Thank you.